Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Claudia Monticelli, the host of this podcast, Let's Talk Soul. Over the years, after having interviewed so many people on so many different topics, I realized that what interested my audience wasn't really the individual topics per se, but was how it impacted them, how it touched their soul. So I'll invite you all to lay back, put your feet up, and if you like what you hear, leave a review, 5-star review. I'd appreciate that. So just enjoy your listening. Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here with another episode, and today I'm with Jay Rooney. Jay, say hello to our audience, Jay.
Hello, everyone.
Boy, I hope I don't have to pull out words from him. Jay today is talking to us from California, and he's got, a lot of us have different hats, but he has quite a few that seemingly don't coincide at all. Now, just let me start by telling you, let me introduce him. How about that? How's that? Would I be doing my job if I introduced you? What do you say, Jay? Okay,
Yeah,
so Jay,
I think you're onto something there. Yeah.
So Jay publishes an award-winning publication and podcast by the name of Game and Word. Is it Word?
Mm-hmm.
Game and Word.
Yes.
I just my mind thought world, automatically. Anyway. And what does it do? It explores the intersections of video games and the arts, sciences, humanities. And all of you can find him, and I'll put his website there and how to reach him in different social contexts, social media. Let me start by saying this, Jay. My podcast, one of my podcasts began as pleasure seeking. It was called Pleasure Seeking. And why? Because I was writing a book at the time, and it was all about pleasure seeking. And in my research, I read about all different specialists in speaking in pleasure seeking research, in trials, errors. And the thing that really gives people pleasure is when they're doing something that they know is not real. And video games is high on that list. That really gives them pleasure. So like even in the bedroom, if there's a narrative, you can create a narrative that's not true. That can give you even added pleasure. So how did a nice boy like you get into the world of video games?
Well, you can blame my parents. They got me a Nintendo Entertainment System back in 1989. I was 4 years old, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Is history.
Yes.
Well, but where did you go from there? Did you go on to a study program, higher education, or did you just funnel that into something all your own?
Yeah. So as far as like getting into the industry, that's a pretty recent development.
Okay.
Like my background is originally in journalism, then in communications, for multiple different industries, and then I finally decided life's too short. I
want to have fun.
Want to do something I enjoy, right?
Yeah.
And figured, oh well, what can I do that I enjoy? Well,
okay.
I like playing video games. I like writing.
Okay, well,
why not combine the two?
That's true. I have two sons.
Yes.
The oldest is a scientist, and he at 10 years old he'd program skaki chess in the computer. And if I really want to make him happy, I'll buy him a game. I'll buy him a game. It has to be a game, And so I understand that. But there's more here. There's because you publish you have a publication What is in
Yes.
that publication besides advertising, perhaps, that will keep your ball rolling there? But what kind of articles are there?
So I write long form articles. So the
Give me an
average
example.
article
Give me
length.
a title.
Sure. So one of them, so say like my most, all right, let's do my most recent one, which
Right.
I
Okay.
actually
Okay.
published on
Okay.
Sunday.
All right.
And it was an episode of my podcast, actually. It's called Dicey
Breaking
Dice.
news. Breaking news. Say it again, please.
Dicey Dice.
Dicey dice. Okay. What was the
Yes.
object of that? I mean, can you tell us?
Yeah, so
Okay.
we were so my guest and I were talking about tabletop games, right? So
Okay.
so
Tabletops.
board games, role
Yeah.
playing games, card games,
Yeah.
stuff that you play on a
Yeah.
tabletop. Hence,
Right.
hence
Right.
the term. Um, which is a nice kind of change of pace for me since I usually talk about video games, but
Right.
I
It's
like to play
nice.
tabletop games as
Sure.
well.
Sure.
So
What's your favorite?
I like that I got to cover that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your favorite
But I
tabletop
guess
game?
it's my favorite tabletop game. I would say my current favorite is probably Forgotten Waters,
Oh.
which is a board game with role-playing elements where you
Uh-huh.
play
Uh-huh.
magical pirates.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so that's a that I think the concept speaks for itself. It's a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Um, as far as my all-time favorite, then that would be probably I want to say Magic the Gathering, but I haven't played that since I was in high school.
Uh-huh.
So, but I mean,
Do you
I
know?
like classics like blackjack,
Okay.
spades,
Okay. I
gin
see. I
rummy.
see.
I like
Do you
those too.
know a game by the name of Go?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Am I,
Yeah.
I don't know how to play it. I know very little about that. I just know that, there are tournaments, international tournaments and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't seem like the kind of Nintendo stuff. I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, that is something you just do. I don't. I want to say tic tac toe or chess or
Mm-hmm.
chess checkers. But
Right.
is there a video game that makes you enter a world of Go that you know of?
So, I mean, so there are actually video game versions of Go. So in
Uh-huh.
a very literal sense,
Yeah, yeah.
yes, definitely.
Uh-huh.
But if you really kind of take the experience and
Yeah.
just kind of strip it down to the bone, right?
Yeah.
When what you're doing when you sit down to play around the Go,
Yeah.
and when you sit down to play a round of, say, Fortnite,
Right.
it's not really all that different, right? You
Yeah, but
have
if you look at it, it seems very different, doesn't it?
it does, yes. And
Okay.
sure, I mean, I would say qualitatively, absolutely. I mean, it's a world of a difference. There are different types
Can
of
you
games.
explain the differences?
Yeah, so I mean, so Go, for example, is much simpler. For one,
Right.
it's a much simpler game. It's a turn-based game,
Uh-huh.
whereas Fortnite is in real time.
Mm-hmm.
There's 100 players
Uh-huh.
for every round of Fortnite, whereas with Go, it's just two.
Two.
So
Mm-hmm.
there are those types of differences, but at the end of the day, what you have is you have people, right?
Yeah. Right.
Um, that are in kind of in some for it's some form of competition between people
Sure. Sure.
that is playing out within a very
Yes.
defined structure, right?
Parameters. Yeah. But
Yes.
but there is, I mean, I'm trying to enter this world and I'm thinking, what brings somebody to go into that? Is it the altered reality? Is it, like I said before, it's
Mm-hmm.
something that's fake and so they feel the freedom of just going
Mm-hmm.
in there and they can't make any mistakes? What is it that makes people so
I
safe to play?
I mean, I think that's part of it. certainly. It's going to vary from person to person, but I think for a lot of people, that's a big part of the appeal, certainly.
Yeah.
There's also some people really enjoy the competitive aspect. And like overcoming challenges and reaching like goals like
because I was thinking, it doesn't have any kind of social. There's no social am I wrong?
No, they're no, it's a social games fulfill a big kind of social need for people, especially in this like kind of like post-COVID era.
Give me an example.
Yeah. So for example, say like a game like World of Warcraft, right? Or any game in that genre, which is which is an MMORPG, which stands for massively multiplayer online role-playing game. What you're doing is you're inhabiting a character in this digital realm that's populated with characters played by other people,
right?
And you communicate, through either through voice or through through type chat. But yeah, that's a game like that would have a very big social element. Some games, like a single player, maybe story-based game is not going to have that
social
nearly as much
to it.
But no, a lot of games do, and also even in like competitive games, right? Usually, while you're waiting to get matched, you'll be in a waiting area or staging area, right? Called a lobby, right? And then you can kind of like chat with your fellow players while you wait to be like slotted into a game, right?
So if you could go back and think of the time when you started doing this until now, has there been a shift, a big shift in the way you did this, or has anything seriously changed? Anything huge developments, or I don't know. Does that ring a bell?
Do you mean do you mean like personally or like
no? Personally
like
and within the space, yeah.
Okay, so personally, I find I'm playing very different games than I used to because now it seems paradoxical when I say it, but there is there is such a thing as playing for work.
And what would that entail, playing for work?
So basically it entails playing games as part of a research, as part of a research process, right? So instead of playing
you're gonna have to be a little more precise.
So instead of playing like just for the fun of it, right? I'm playing a game with a kind of more critical eye, right? I'm trying to analyze it. I'm trying to see I'm trying to peek under the hood, so to speak.
Or
trying to deconstruct it. Yes.
Oh, you yourself. Oh, I was thinking that you were talking about people can use the games for their own research.
That's also true. That is definitely, especially with things like with virtual reality and augmented reality becoming more popular. There's absolutely applications in that. It could like virtual reality particularly holds a lot of potential as we're talking about things like field training for archaeologists or medical professionals, right? And there's already you're already starting to see that there's kind of starting to see the early stages of that. It's not quite, it hasn't quite hit prime time, but it'll get there.
Yeah. Interesting. So now this brings me to a topic dear to my heart, and I ask everyone because I have maybe this is 120, 113, 15, 16, I don't remember, episodes in this podcast. So I've talked to a lot of people, and inevitably across the board, no matter what they do. Yesterday I spoke to a former NYPD detective, and so his stories were really incredible, but there was always this spiritual side to the story. Now he got into that world, out of a love of service, because for all intents and purposes, he's a civil servant, right? A police officer is a civil servant. Anybody who works for the government, it's well known that government salaries are quite low compared to the private sector. Now, in your case, you're doing something that you absolutely love because it's a choice. And that's today it could be thought of as a luxury. Not everyone has that ability or has the patience, let's say, to do that. But was that choice also, let's say, suggested or motivated by a spiritual change in your life at all? I'm fishing here.
I think so. So it was. So the change was partly out of necessity. I'd recently lost a job to COVID, and
right.
So of course, when the big change like that happens, you do a lot of soul seeking.
Sure.
Right? And then I realized, like I'm really burnt out on the rat race. I'm not getting any younger. I know I have a baby face, but I'll be pushing 40 in a few years. So not getting any younger.
Okay.
And I figured,
for some reason, Jay, I'll tell you that for some reason, 40 for men seems like the end of the world. It's just for men. It doesn't happen to women. It happens either much earlier or much later for women. So just hang loose. You're all right.
Right.
So then you did the soul searching, and what? Go on. And how?
So I figured. So I figured two things. One, I did not want to work for other people again because I didn't want to, I didn't want to relinquish control over my destiny.
Oh, there's that word again.
So fully control. To others, right? I mean, yeah,
it's an illusion, huh? It's an illusion to have control even over your own self.
I mean, well, I don't know. It depends.
Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. Yeah. Okay, so when you talk about relinquish control, I understand on a superficial, level, we're talking about control. I want to have lunch at 3 instead of 12. That kind of control is easy, but also there's the other, raising your gaze, wide-ranging control over whether you get to 3 p.m. or not. That a lot of that is out of your control, right? And that enters also the spiritual realm. How do you you mentioned, because I use a questionnaire for my guests most of the time, and they mentioned topics that they would be willing to speak about, and you mentioned the occult and magic. Yes. And often the occult and magic are brought together. Spirituality is always mentioned, but it's not, in that order: spirituality, occult, and magic. What is your? Would you mind speaking about that? Your experience with that, or how you got close to that?
So I'm Jewish. I'm a practicing Kabbalist. Would practice Zen for a very, very long time and still incorporate elements of that into my practice.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm just
but what does that
friendly
mean?
Neighborhood mystic.
But what does that mean in terms of because our audience are not all of that faith and don't know what the Kabbalah is? Can you give us in a short version?
Yeah, that's
even a longer
that is
version.
Freaking impossible. But
you got the floor.
I will give it my best shot.
Okay.
So Kabbalah is a way of, you could call it a framework, I guess, like a spiritual framework
that's like a frame of reference, I guess. Yeah.
Yes, that seeks to understand the nature of reality by contemplating kind of synchronicities related to points in God or the universe, whatever you want to call it. It's a creative process. Specifically like specific emanations in that process called sephirot.
Okay, and that's a term used by people who talk about Kabbalah or Kabbalists. Go ahead.
Yes. So a sephirot is the plural. So there are 10 of those, and there are kind of 10 distinct stages in the process of creation, right? From nothing to just from nothing to something, right?
Okay.
From the celestial to the material, right? And the idea is that, like if you can, and the path is called the tree of life. There's a famous
the tree
diagram
of life.
you've probably seen, right?
It's quite well known.
Idea, yes, and the idea is, through knowing, and understanding the nature of the divine, and really, I mean, your own inner divinity, and getting in touch with that you can ascend the tree of life and eventually kind of reunify with with the Godhead, right?
Yes. Now,
so that's kind of that's the gist of it.
That's the gist of it. But we know, and I'm going to include this you with it in this knowing, the word occult, but even the word magic have probably the world over, anywhere you go in the world, a negative connotation, a lot, So I'm wondering, how does the occult fit in? All right, for example, if I were to talk to you about Roman Catholicism and the Bible, I would never talk about the occult as emanating from that ever, or magic as coming from that.
You'd be surprised.
I know I would be surprised, but let's say the scriptures are not didn't intend that. We could talk at length, I'm sure, but in this case, in your case, did the occult, did your experience, or does your experience with the occult include personal experiences or experiences with others interacting with you?
So when you say others,
I'm not sure. Yeah.
So when you say others, you mean like other people? Do you mean spirits?
Both. I mean, if there has been a witch who worked with you, or if there were, if you've had visions or interactions at a level of, at a spiritual level. Okay, what does occult mean to you?
So, I mean, occult to me is basically exactly what the definition is, right? Like hidden knowledge.
Something hidden, right? Hidden, yeah.
Something hidden, exactly. And when people, and I think that the association is because, like, thanks to institutions like the church and also Hollywood,
right? Sure.
People, when people think occult, they think like, oh, you're summoning demons, right?
Yeah, right.
Right. When there's so much more than that, right? Really, like anytime you're trying to kind of like peek at, just kind of like peek and tug at the fabric of reality, I think, that is, that's when you're entering that realm.
Oh, give me is it possible here to give me an example of peeking at the fabric of reality when you say that?
So if you're in a very deep meditative state, right? And and you have those flashes, like those little flashes of enlightenment where everything just kind of clicks and you get it, right? Even if only for a second, but you get it, right? Like, like that's, to me, like that is a moment of contact with it is a supernatural moment,
right?
Okay. You are connecting with what's hidden, what's usually hidden
right
in
what about
everyday
magic?
existence.
What about magic here?
And that's a whole that's a whole
another
other can
that's
of
another
worms.
talk, but yeah, that's a can of worms for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Being burned at the stake and
Yeah.
all. But
Yeah.
when we talk about magic, I don't want to bring in the CK or the C. It doesn't matter. It's magic as people know it around the world. When you talk about magic, just
Mm-hmm.
like you mentioned the occult, can you give me your
Mm-hmm.
definition of magic?
It's the imposition of your will, right? It's
Okay.
basically what it is. It's the imposition of
Okay.
the will
Basically, can
on
you
reality.
expound on
Yes.
that a little bit and
Yeah.
give us
And
an
that could be,
example?
that could be anything from, your traditional, Pikachu to my north, Starscream to my east, Alakazam,
Right. Right.
abracadabra, boom,
Yeah.
I cast a
Yeah.
spell. Like, it
Yeah.
can range everything from that to so I think even like an act like picking up a paintbrush, I think
Mm-hmm.
is an inherently magical
An
act,
intention. There's an
because
intention. Mm-hmm.
there's an intention, and more almost, and just as importantly, that intention is manifesting something into reality. You pick up
Yeah.
a paintbrush,
Mm-hmm.
you brush it on canvas.
Mm-hmm.
There's a dog now where
Yeah.
there wasn't
Mm-hmm.
one, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I think it's a wonderful metaphor, really,
Mm-hmm.
for what magic is.
Yeah. Magic in most people's mind typically involves something of a ritualistic nature.
Mm-hmm.
Say a series of occurrences or a some kind of 1, 2, 3, 4. These processes will go through this. First I clear the room. There are a lot of things that are done. It's just not okay. I want to eat a hamburger. I'll think of it with all my intention, and then okay, I'll ring the place and have them. And that's not magic, right? If
Right.
not
Yeah.
exactly,
True.
not
True.
exactly. So
Yeah.
we have the thought of magic in a broad sense here,
Yeah.
and the
And
occult.
then it's also, I think it's also very important to point out that that what is and is not considered magic is
Mm-hmm.
also going to change. It's going to vary very widely depending on where you are and when you are,
Can you give
right?
us a couple of examples to tell me the difference?
So for example, right, we talk about, like about the Bible,
Right,
prohibiting magic,
right.
right? But like what would when you pray,
Yeah.
when you pray to God, what I mean, you're appealing to a supernatural
Mm-hmm.
entity to
Mm-hmm.
alter reality in your favor. Like that's a when you say the rosary, what is that? A repeated incantation, right? It's
Incantation.
just
Yeah.
so basically, so I say is, it's kind of like, if there's like a dominant faith or institution, right? It's kind of like, okay, like our magic is good. We'll call it, prayer and miracles and all that. All the
Yeah.
other stuff
Yeah.
is, like
I'm
sorcery and
laughing.
occult and
I'm
all that.
laughing. I'm
And oh,
laughing.
bad, right? Even though it's in many ways, it's like they're similar, almost, it can be almost identical acts, just like you just frame it a little differently. And I used, and I used to work in PR. So I understand, it's all about how you frame it, right? And then
Yeah.
perception is reality.
I'm laughing
And in a
because
few,
as you were talking, you said you pray to get to have the divine alter reality in some way, and so I've had a flash. I've asked about 5 years ago. I had beads, and I was playing. I was actually playing with an invocation, and it was to be said 108 times. And the invocation was geared toward abundance. Okay. And I did the entire thing, right? I kid you not, the day after I got a check in the mail for $1,500 from a suit that I hadn't, from somebody who owed me for 10 years ago, And I thought, oh my God, I can't touch those beads. I'm not, I scared
I
myself.
love I love when that kind of stuff happens.
I know.
It's so,
How
yeah,
scary.
it's so
Scared me.
I mean, yeah, it
I
can be
thought to myself,
freaky,
oh,
definitely.
jeez, I should have done this 10 years ago. I would have got it right
Right,
away.
yeah. Right.
Oh. And so, then I toyed with the idea and I thought, well, if this really works, I mean, why won't I do that every single day? What stops me from doing that every single day? And I thought, my God, my life would go nuts. I would go nuts if I did that every day. I really would. I mean, it's a matter of choice and intention and desire and all of that. Now,
yes.
What about in did you ever? I mean, do you work with the occult on a professional basis, or on a friendly basis? Let's say.
I would say most of my work is towards. I would say, I don't know, seeking, perceiving. Yeah, I guess you like the good old search for truth, right?
Yeah.
And sure, I mean, like, I do some workings related to abundance and
right. Well, let's say that
material abundance. But I would say for the most part, it's for my own honestly, for my own sanity mostly.
And so we know that most of this type of, well, there's a limit to what we can know. Right, the occult is always occult, but there's limit. It's a limit to how much you really can know. And when that happens, it just puts us in our place. You say, okay, amen, that's enough. Okay, I'll stop now. Yeah.
Right.
Well, I'm trying to think. You've been very forthcoming. I love it. But I do see here food and cooking. We didn't even get to that. You like to cook, or you just like to eat?
Both.
We do have to eat. Yeah, we are.
We do have to eat,
bodies,
but yes, but I very much enjoy cooking.
What kind of food?
So I'm from New Orleans originally. So so a lot of Cajun food. I'm part of my family's from Mexico as well, so Mexican food as well. I mean, usually, like I have a family, so usually it's quick, simple dishes, soups, a lot of soups, pastas, casseroles, and so forth.
I'm thinking, I'm looking, and what I usually look for is also a book. There is not, but the publication. How often is that? A monthly, a weekly? How is that?
Weekly.
It's a weekly, so that's a lot of work. That's a lot of work. Yes. Have you considered putting pen to paper, so to speak, to try your hand at publishing a larger is there
absolutely
something in the making?
Let's put it this way, nothing I can announce.
You're funny.
It's still very preliminary. It's right now
teeth. That's just what I in the beginning. I'm gonna have to pull this guy's teeth.
Right now it's little more than an intention, right? But
you ain't doing your magic.
once I do the work and once it manifests, then I can speak more to it.
Okay, then you'll come back on and we can talk about that. Okay. I won't even ask you. I won't ask anymore. Jay, it was such a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks so much for coming.
Thanks for having me. This is fun.
It was a lot of fun. And I will, please write to me when the pen gets to the paper, okay?
Yeah. Yes.
I'd love that.
Great.
You're a funny guy. Bye-bye.
Bye.
you.